Misty Valley Cooperative presents When We Were Gone Astray. The paths of the world twist and turn. They divide and converge, taking you to unexpected places. Welcome to the haunted town of Assembly, and to the strange lands around it. The days are growing shorter and the nights are chill. So put another log on the fire. Find a comfortable chair. Sit back. Relax. Listen. Chapter 14. Lost. Ye winged seraphs fly like comets through the sky. Fletch heard a woman's voice singing as he left Doc's office with his father and Silver. He stopped and listened, but then realized the song must have been in his head. The dark street was silent, apart from the sound of their footsteps. They crossed the street and approached the Foresters' station wagon. "It's late," Mark said. "I hadn't realized how late. Must be long after midnight. Did we ever have any supper? I can't remember." "I don't think so," Silver replied. "Fletch and I made sandwiches under the church, but we never ate them." "How about it, Fletch?" his father asked. "Do you want some soup or something before you turn in?" Fletch shook his head. "I'm not really very hungry." "Sleep is probably what you need. Nothing more to be done tonight." "There's one more thing," Fletch said. "Dad, I want to talk to Silver for a few minutes. You take the car. We'll walk back through the garden." "All right, but don't stay out too long. It's starting to rain, and you're exhausted." As Mark pulled away from the curb, Silver turned to Fletch. "He's right. You don't look very well. Maybe you should stay home tomorrow and rest." "Silver, there's worse things than that to worry about. I've been trying to tell you all night." "Tell me what? Are you okay?" "No, I'm not," said Fletch. "I'm not okay at all." "What's wrong?" Silver took his hand, raised it to his lips, then stopped. Fletch could feel his muscles freeze. "Fletch, what is it?" "I'm the other one. The other Fletch." He met Silver's gaze, feeling frightened and sick. "You were right before, when you thought he was the one who died. Oh, Silver, I'm so sorry." Silver stared at him. "I wanted to tell you earlier, but you were so upset. I couldn't hurt you anymore." Silver released a slow breath. "I thought I was imagining it. I thought maybe I was still in shock. It's the truth. I wish it weren't." "Have you told your father?" "No, only Doc back at the office. I'm going to tell Dad in a few minutes." Silver sat down just inside the gate between the old corn rows. He looked around as if unable to focus. Then he looked up. "Oh, Fletch, what are we going to do?" "I don't think there's any way to change it, or to bring him back." "That's not what I meant. How can we go on without him? It's like we've come to the end of the world." Fletch sat beside him among the cornstalks in the drizzle of rain, not speaking. The small space between them seemed immense. "I guess I should go and tell Dad," he said at last. Silver nodded. "Let me come with you. We'll talk to him, and then we'll figure out things in the morning. It's hard to even think right now." He rose slowly to his feet, and they crossed the garden and approached the porch steps. Then they noticed Mark sitting in one of the rockers. Fletch mounted the steps. "Dad," he began. "It's all right," Mark told him. "I know." He stood up, opening his arms to Fletch. Silver came and rested his hands on Fletcher's shoulders. "Maybe we should have that soup after all," he said. Fletch kept quiet, except when they spoke to him. He shared their grief and tried to be present without intruding. When Silver left, at last, Fletch opened the door of the truck for him and watched him climb in. Then he pushed the door shut and stepped back. He stood watching, his hands clenched, as Silver drove away. He scarcely slept, trapped between impossibilities. He wanted to go back, and he wanted to stay. What kind of vacancy had he left when he disappeared? Were they searching for him, his father and Silver and Betsy? Were they trying to find a way to reach him from the place beyond the bridge? Had they any idea what had happened? The ordinary events at school the next day had a quality of unreality. Fletch felt as if he were trapped in a fever dream in which nothing was substantial or sure. He and Silver moved through the day as normally as possible. They shared Fletch's textbook in geometry, and during the lesson a dried wildflower slipped from between the pages. Silver bent and retrieved it from the floor and held it for a moment before giving it to Fletch, who tucked it back into place. During the break after class, Silver disappeared without a word. Renee approached Fletch in the hall. "What's wrong? You guys are not breaking up." Fletch shook his head. "It's not that, exactly, but we're having a bad time." "Did you have a fight?" Fletch tried to smile. "Yes, but not with each other." "Fletch, don't you dare let him slip away." "I can't help it," he told her miserably. "I don't know how to stop it." "Tell him." He looked at her uncertainly. "Tell him you love him." "I think he knows, but telling him wouldn't do any good." Renee's eyes blazed. "That's bullshit, and you know it. I could tell him, but he needs to hear it from you." "Renee, if you only knew." "I know one thing," she said. "That boy loves you. He's never loved anyone like that. He's hurting, and you're hurting, and it doesn't have to be that way." Fletch knew it was useless to argue with her. It was like trying to stand up to a tornado. He found Silver on the breezeway after school, in a spot where he usually met a girl in a fleece jacket, her nose in a paperback book. The smile, though sad, was almost the same. "Sorry I skipped out," Silver said. "Are you ready to go?" "Pretty much." Fletch picked up Silver's gym bag out of habit and slung it over his shoulder. "Renee is angry with me. She thinks we're fighting." "I'll talk to her." Fletch tilted his head. "I tried. How would you explain it?" "I would speak slowly and in great detail." "That might work, actually, if you can get a word in." Fletch shifted the bag to his other shoulder. "What do you keep in this thing? Encyclopedias?" "Hiking boots," said Silver. "A 6-pack of Coke. The Eiffel Tower." "I should have guessed." They reached the truck, and Silver opened the door. Fletch pushed the gym bag onto the seat and climbed in. "Dad said Forby stayed at the church all night. Doc took his place this morning. Doc doesn't think Fletch should be left alone." "I'm going to go this afternoon," Silver said. "I told Dad we'd both do it, if you're okay with that. We can stay the whole evening until Josh arrives. I think they've come up with some kind of rotation, so it isn't too hard on anyone. What I can't understand is why they're doing this. Why don't they want to bury him? Betsy and Doc want to wait. I'm not sure why." Silver went around to the driver's side and got in. Fletch found a half-empty bag of potato chips on the dashboard and ate a few of them. He stole a glance at Silver, whose features were tired and drawn. "Did you eat any lunch?" Fletch asked him. "A little bit. You?" Fletch shook his head. "You need to eat, Fletch. I need to eat." Fletch handed him the chips. "There's leftover fish cookies at home, if Dad hasn't thrown them out." Silver buckled his seatbelt. He turned. "Fletch, thank you." "What did I do?" "You're being so kind to me. It helps." Fletch looked down. "Silver, you always took care of me. Back in the beginning, when everyone was afraid I might die, you kept me going." He sighed. "The other you, I guess I mean. She was so beautiful, so full of adventure. I fell in love, and the whole world changed." Silver put the truck in gear. "Tell me about her." "Well, she did the craziest things. When I first met her, there was this snake we found in the forest over at the old settlement." "I remember the snake." Fletch glanced at him. "Oh, yeah, I guess you do. Silver, this is so strange." Silver nodded. "I think it must be even stranger for you than for me. I mean, you're just like him, but I must be so different from her." "You'd be amazed how much is the same," Fletch replied. "You look like her. Your posture, even your laugh sometimes, that look you get in your eyes." "What look?" "The one you're giving me now." "I'm not giving you a look." "Yes, you are. I've seen it 100 times. Silver almost laughed. Fletch caught it, stillborn, held it tightly, and found himself in tears. Slowly the week passed. A routine was established for keeping vigil at the church. Silver and Liz continued to come to the pastorium for supper, or Fletch and Mark went to the Kendalls' cabin. Fletch and Silver drove to school together, completed their homework by the fire, and took walks together, just as before. Silver insisted they carry the cane poles, though Fletch felt sure that Crother Wills would not trouble them again. The awkwardness between them eased, and they grew accustomed to one another's presence. Now and then their hands would accidentally touch, and Fletch would feel Silver shift position slightly and draw away. It wasn't a rejection, nothing hurtful. It seemed more like a gesture of respect. Fletch understood, or thought he did, but every time it happened he felt the pang of loss inside him reawaken. He recalled his fear that, in becoming the Paraclete, Silver might move beyond his reach, but he had never imagined this quiet, considerate space to which he was growing accustomed. One evening, growing sleepy by the fire, he had asked Silver to tell him a story. "I'm too tired," said Silver. "I need to go home." "Just one story," Fletch pleaded. "It can be a short one." "Do you want another fairy tale?" "Yes, I'd like that." Silver turned his gaze to the fire. Once there was a girl who often turned into a boy when she dreamed. She lived in a little house by the river, with the forest at the door. Fletch smiled. "I know that house," he said. "I know that girl." He closed his eyes, hoping the story might become a dream. At night, the girl would stand by the window, looking for the gleam of a lantern along the forest path. Sometimes she saw moonlight. Sometimes she saw fireflies. But the boy with the lantern did not appear. She thought he was lost in a country far away, frozen deep in an enchanted sleep. Fletch stretched out beside the hearth, imagining himself lying cold and still in a room lit by dim and flaring lamps. He couldn't move or think or feel. He could only sleep and dream. At his feet the south stars turned. At his head 4 beasts watched with sleepless eyes, prepared to do his bidding if he should wake. Where was the girl? What had become of the forest house? Fletch opened his eyes. The firelight had dimmed. He lay beneath a coverlet, cold in the chill room. He turned his head and found that Silver had gone. Highways. Josh Avery banged on the hatch in the furnace room of the empty church. "Ho, Doc, you awake?" "It's unlocked," Doc called. The hatch screeched as Josh opened it. The tall man climbed down the rungs and stopped at the bottom, stooping slightly to avoid the curved ceiling of the tunnel. He peered ahead into the lamplit room. "You figured him out yet?" he asked as he entered. "No, Josh. I have to tell you, I'm at a loss." "But he's dead, right? You're sure about that?" "I'm pretty sure. Not enough blood left in him to keep a cat alive." He watched as Josh went to the cot and looked down at Fletch. "He's cold, no heartbeat. He isn't breathing. But something's not right." "He doesn't look dead," Josh said. "Yes, that's it," Doc agreed. "He looks as if he's asleep, except that he's so still." Doc went over and touched Fletch's cheek. "His skin is cold, but pliable. There's no sign of decomposition. And it's been, more than a week. I'm not sure what we're waiting for, but I'm convinced we need to wait." "It was a week Sunday," Josh informed him. "Betsy hasn't said much. It's hard to tell what she thinks." Doc nodded his assent. "All I can gather is that she thinks he's caught between the ways. He's outside of time. Do you know anything about that?" "Not much. She's tried over the years to fill me in. She'll disappear sometimes, you know, and I'll know she's traveling. But when she gets back, she won't say where she's been." Josh thought back, remembering an event from 20 years before. "Once I saw her down in the lower field. It was still that day, but her hair was moving in the wind. She heard me, turned around, and she was so young, Doc. She was just a girl." "Are you sure it was Betsy?" "Oh, yes. She showed me her hands." "And now there's Silver," Doc mused. "Saturday morning, rain or shine. He seems prepared for what will happen." "He's a quick study," said Josh. "Always has been. And he thinks for himself. He'll do things none of us expect." Doc pointed to the shelves by the wall. "There's plenty of food left, if you want to heat up some supper. 4-by or Ellie will be in later to stay the night." "Doc?" Doc looked up. "You keep a close watch on him, the second one. He doesn't look good. Reminds me of how he was back during the summer." "I've talked to him a few times," said Doc, "and I examine him regularly. He's all right physically. He's just lost, Josh. He feels he doesn't belong." "I can see that, but he's wrong, Doc. One thing I have learned from Betsy is that all these forked ways, they're like highways. We're on different roads, but it's all just one big country." Lucky. Dwight looked down at the old man in the wheelchair. It had been months since he had been to see his grandfather, and half the time the man didn't even recognize him. Dwight had gone looking for the man in his younger form, but Crowther's camp at the ford looked disused. Someone had broken into the mule shed and taken away the glass jugs, and who else but Crowther would have done that? "You killed him, right?" Crowther looked up, making an effort to focus. "What?" "Fletch. You cut his throat." The man tilted his head. "That I did." "There were 2 of them," Dwight told him. "I can't figure that out." "Works that way sometimes. You ever run into yourself?" Dwight shook his head. "You're damned lucky then." His eyes dimmed. "Wish I had a lucky." Dwight had anticipated this. He took a pack from his coat pocket and saw the light return to the man's eyes. "They still make 'em." "They're hard to get," Dwight said, "but there's always a few packs at the bait shop. I found a bunch of cartons up in the loft." Hell yes, that was my doing. Crowther took the cigarette in trembling fingers. Keep this one for later. Don't want to get caught. Lucky as an old Tennessee club. I wish I could have saved a bottle of that. I'll bring you some Dickles next time, Dwight told him. Why did you have to kill him? Crowther sighed wearily. Sometimes a man just has to take the hard way out. Only way to cut myself free. Things I had to do. I had to travel. I was in the middle of something over at Patmos that couldn't wait. He gave his grandson a look of appraisal. There's not much to killing. The trouble lies with what comes after. You'll find out for yourself one day. Dwight stared him down. I'm not like that. I'm not like you, or Dad either. The man's look hardened. You're going to be a creeping Jesus, like the rest of them over there at Assembly. Silver's not like that. Crowther eased back into his wheelchair. The Silver boy, a streak of summer lightning. He's my brother. Crowther laughed. You don't have a clue who he is, or what he is. He's going to be the Paraclete. I'm not surprised, said Crowther. It was a dismissal, and Dwight knew it. When We Were Gone Astray is produced by Misty Valley Cooperative. It is the second book of the Forked Ways. The audio production is by R.J. Williams. The cover art for this chapter is by Marie Hancock. The text and audiobook are copyright 2021 by Beau Farr. All rights reserved.